talkback. So here's my sermon. I'll try to cut it short so we have more time to talk. Here we are on Independence Day weekend, headed into what one could only in a UU church would predict would be a sermon that earnestly champions America's decision to separate church and state. However, in choosing to restart a conversation that was started a while back with the kids about what's real and what's not, I feel compelled to say this is not really necessarily a gushing advertisement for that liberty. Welcome. Hi. Because I think it'll help stir the pot for what I hope will be a healthy discussion, because it is how I at least initially talk about it. I don't think I approach the topic with as much clarity as most people do. So deep in my moral reptilian brain, before I have come around to accept this and champion really all the reasons that I'm glad we have this church-state separation, I need to say that it depresses me that we need to have such laws. And my most primitive, I don't initially care about what systems get us to the right positions and concerns. I don't know if you've ever had this thought or not. I might even say I don't even really care that much about democracy, if you want to know the truth, which I'm also in favor of. What I want to say is democracy is fine. Democratically electing representatives from various geographic regions is probably the best of the present systems of governance that we can think of and that are existing. But as we can see in the seesaw leadership way that it's gone, it can yield jammed up parties that sort of foster, I think, a challenge to what we often think of as like the magical elixir that is democracy. I would just as happily be ruled by an elite cast of philosophers, smart and balanced group of men and women who had from different races and different sort of genders, had in their benevolent and intelligent hearts an agenda of uplifting the oppressed, suppressing the attentions of psychopaths, and intentionally enacting laws that would preserve the planet. They would get my support probably over democracy. I'd support any government or plan that had chief on its agenda plans to lift up women's rights, intentionally and compassionately manage population growth, which we're not doing, and was willing to defend the right of everyone and anyone to love who they love. So if Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Naomi Klein and the recently deceased Bishop Tutu and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Bill McKibben were to consult with the present Pope, Greta Thunberg, and the Dalai Lama to peacefully take the reins of power from the likes of the Chinese Premier and Putin to lead us towards a sustainable, gun-free, egalitarian state, I'm in. I have enough of a real concern for the efficiency of government and enough of a sense of urgency for the state of the planet and enough of a sense of the clarity about how things must work for a peaceful future that I just want the right people with the right priorities making the right decisions, and democracy doesn't always give us that. I frankly really don't care what they intended when they wrote the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, or the Second Amendment 200 plus years ago. For that matter, I don't think corporations or people or any individual who wants to own 3 assault rifles fits into the definition of a well-armed militia. Or frankly, I don't even believe having guns should be legal. The church-state debate also depresses me, not just because there really is no clean way to sort out the difference between our religious feelings that exist in our country from our secular concerns. That's maybe even the heart of it. See, at a deeper level, I say in my pompous, snotty master's in ethics education, I know that morality and what we really care about doesn't play well between the lines of what's secular and what's religious. Those are contrivances. People don't divide their brains and their values like that. There is no division in any of us, and I ask you to think about that, whether, or even in any culture, about what's a deeply held religious view and what your political views are. Religion is politics. Politics is religion. Pretending anything else, which we try to do in this country all the time, is Pollyanna and silly. This might be a bit childish, but like a petulant teen, I struggle with the kind of intellectual boundaries, legalisms, and codes that try to establish differences between the very real moral questions we as a people face, as if they divided down between church and state. I don't think they do. So to me, more often than to debate about whether a state court down south can have a statue of the Ten Commandments up in the lobby, or a statue of Jefferson Davis, for that matter, out on the lawn, doesn't feel like my fight. I understand that might be a violation of the way that most people feel with different, Indian mascots and the such. That gets kind of clumsy. But as a UU pastor, I say, if people want to put up the Ten Commandments in front of their state house, if that speaks to that people, then put them up. And if other people peacefully want to protest to have them removed, then let's fight to have them removed. I might even join me. The church-state debate basically bores me. See, to me, and us being anti-racist is, for me, not just a political concern, but a religious one, right? And so is my fear that we are so a little enamored with the idea of living on another planet that I think that the space program is a threat to the very Earth itself. Should I have that fear as a religious fear or a secular concern? Because they feel the same to me. If someone believes that souls are inserted into fetuses at the time of conception, if they feel like that outweighs the rights of women to control the life that is only beginning to grow inside their own body, I might vehemently disagree with that. I do. But I would rather not scream that it is an invalid opinion because it is sourced by a religious idea. Every idea is and is not a religious idea. I know that the values a culture eventually chooses to be guided by are always in the middle of an uncomfortable compromise, aren't they? The church-state debate seems to me to nearly promise that there will be a clean option for moving forward because we've been able to separate our moral concerns from our religious ones, but I think that's patently untrue. Just like what makes language in a record or a movie explicit is always shifting, just how short a skirt should be before a teen gets sent home from school, or what schools should get public funding, or whether there should be a nativity scene up in the center of town, or whether the homes in Deerfield and Sturbridge Village should be preserved as a historical artifact of the earliest days of America, or banned as the first outposts of a violent, oppressive invasion to indigenous people. I know that just like every civilization and generation before us, there is always a version of a culture war going on. I know that who gets to determine whether in this Bible-loving nation you get stoned to death, and not in the fun way, for drinking milk because you're wearing wool, is, regardless of any proposed division between the sacred and the secular, always going to be a fight about whose norms win the day. I'll stop there. And I'll let us join in with that debate about whether the church and state division makes sense and how you feel about it in the great forum of America's town halls. You have the microphone?